it. So now, the benefits of samadhi are incredible. So samadhi is a word that means concentration. Shamatha is the end result of this particular practice, and I think they're not always equivalent. I don't know the definitions properly, but certainly shamatha is a version of samadhi. Put it like that. Maybe the other way around. I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Okay, here we go. I'll read to you. Lamieshi. Well, I'll give a framework. I'll give context. Oh, there's the cover. That's wonderful. Thank you. So I'll give you some context. There we go, Lynn. Thanks, darling. That there are two modes of meditation, millions of techniques, okay, but two methods. And the first one is they're both known in terms of the end results, and they're labeled. So this one, calm abiding, or shamatha, is the end result of accomplishing these 9 stages, where you've got your mind to this single pointed concentration. The other one is called special insight, or vipassana. Lama talks about this here. Yeah, maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. Okay, so there's 2 modes, but the point, so most people, the general view of meditation is the first one. But for the Buddha, that's just the start. That's getting your mind to a subtle level so that you can do the real work of developing insight. Vipassana means insight. Insight into what? Insight into emptiness, insight into impermanence, insight into karma, insight into everything. So you've got to do that, you've got to have concentration. It's very evident. You can't do as we just said then, you can't do much without concentration. But we start where we can. So the ideal scenario is to have this single point of concentration. Then it's easy to get insight into everything. It's quick path to. So Tantra is a more radical methods, more technically brilliant methods that get us to an even subtler level than shamatha. So without calm abiding, shamatha, we cannot realize. Mahamudra is this term, it's Sanskrit, but it's referring to emptiness, in particular emptiness of the mind. It's a very specific technique. So as I mentioned, to achieve the realization of Mahamudra, emptiness, the reality of non-duality, we first need to develop calm abiding. In fact, it is not possible without it, which doesn't mean we don't start. We've got to start somewhere, So we must achieve the subtler levels of consciousness, of indestructible one-pointed concentration, what in Sanskrit we call samadhi. It is difficult to realize non-duality, is another term for emptiness, okay, broadly speaking, not because it's hiding from us, but because our concepts are so thick. At the moment we live at the level of gross conceptuality, including all our emotions, and of course that's all that's posited in neuroscience, besides the senses. And for Buddha, that's the tip of the iceberg. So we must refine our concepts. We must achieve subtle mindfulness, subtle awareness, and subtle clarity. Otherwise, there's no way we can see the unconscious levels of ego, grasping, and independent self. Not possible. Samadhi is the source of liberation. Without perfect samadhi, then, there is no way to become liberated from samsara and no way to achieve enlightenment. There is no exception, whether you're a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or Buddhist. To cut the dualistic view, we need calm abiding. But calm abiding is not enough. On the other hand, some people actually think that this state of samadhi, this one-pointed concentration, is all we need in order to cut ego. But that is wrong. Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us that calm abiding alone is not enough to cut the dualistic view. We also need to develop special insight, or vipassana. So there's a vipassana technique that's very popular in the world, which indeed is one of Buddha's teachings, but it's just one particular technique. And it's apparently you're using your concentration, the first mode of meditation, and then you go to the second mode, and the job you do with your focused mind is to scan the experiences of your body. So what does Buddha want us to get insight to? Not the body, for sure. We get very caught up in the body in the West. He wants us to get insight into impermanence, how everything changes. But there's hundreds of techniques that Buddha taught, and then particularly in the Mahayana, in the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva, the last perfection of all is special insight into emptiness. So Mahamudra is a particular approach to realizing emptiness, which is the final one we need. Oh, I'm running out of battery now. Okay. In other words, so Vipassana. So in Tibetan we call it Lak Tong. Lak meaning extra and Tong meaning seeing. So we can interpret this to mean that we go beyond seeing conventional reality and achieve the extra seeing of the universal reality of Mahamudra. In other words, we need the two kinds of meditation together, calm abiding and special insight. And this applies exactly in Tantra, but it's a different approach, but you're using a different way to get the insight. So the benefits of samadhi are incredible. Nevertheless, even without special insight, the results of samadhi alone are unbelievable, almost unimaginable. When we understand this, when we realize how amazing the results are, we cannot help but try to develop it. There is no way we become lazy. We will have much energy and we will have much energy and make great effort. We won't even worry about eating. I'll explain some of the benefits. You go beyond sensory and conceptual consciousness. As your concentration develops, you will go beyond your body. Your mind will be non-conceptual, so it becomes easy to cut the complex world of the five sense objects, to eliminate the superstitions. In such a unified state, your mind becomes so subtle, so sharp, you can easily eradicate the complex dualistic thoughts. You can touch reality. This is the feature of samadhi. And out of meditation, you can easily deal with your delusions. They are so light. You can stop them immediately. Think of your mind now, okay? It's complete chaos all the time. We can't imagine any other state. But this is what Buddha's incredible technique enables us to do, is to have effortless and complete and total control over every tiny thought. It's almost unimaginable. You experience bliss. In the subtle state of concentration, you experience bliss, ecstatic bliss. I mean, words seem hilarious, don't they? I mean, who talks this way, Just naturally. The more concentration you have, the more integrated you are, and thus the more rapture, the more bliss you experience. In the beginning, the bliss you experience is physical, which is a grosser level. But as your concentration deepens, as you throw off the layers of blankets of grosser consciousness, you experience bliss exclusively at the mental level. This is because you've stopped perceiving the objects of the five senses. You've closed the door to the superstitions. All the contradictory concepts have disappeared. Your mind is now crystal clear, as if you could count every atom. As your concentration gets stronger and you reach ever subtler levels, your mind becomes super powerful. From his own experience, Lama Tsongkhapa says that you can reach a point of such clarity in your meditation that your mind feels almost infinite. Your mind is so clear, so sharp, it's as if you could count as if you could distinguish all the subtle physical energies. You'll have the courageous thought, I can count all the atoms of the universe. This level of mind is more powerful than even scientific instruments. This is coming from direct experience from 3,000 years, people. 3,000 years. This is not made up by the hippies in 1960. You will have an experience of space. And we forget that one. You're always joyful. This is my point to Catherine. That's with concentration. Even without it, just with virtue, you're joyful. Imagine the joy when you're gone. But the thing is, the woman's question before is like, this kind of sounds like hysterical joy. We've got to be happy with whatever we've got, and cultivate it. That's the tantric one. You cultivate that attitude. You cultivate the virtue. So you cultivate being joyful, When you arise from your meditation, you feel liberated instead of uncertain and full of doubts and conflicts. You experience inner peace. You'll always have a joyful, happy vibration. In fact, you continuously experience tremendous pleasure. Now the pleasure of chocolate is nothing to you. What you can now experience with your mind is super. It's like another realm, another dimension. And when your senses do come into contact with their objects, of course, you experience bliss then too. You hardly even notice whether it's day or night. Actually, even now, when you have samsaric happiness, you have a similar kind of experience. You dance and drink all night, intoxicated with the pleasure. Time just flies. Well, this is what happens when you're intoxicated with the blissful experience of samadhi. And of course, this shows, so that's the thing, when we hear bliss, when we hear rapture, we hear kind of out of control berserk, But what you've got to realize, the thing that every meditator says, and this is the point here, when you've got this bliss, the mind at the subtle level, you are calm. You're completely calm. We think of even the slight pleasure of a chocolate cake. Look how disturbed our mind is, because it's just ordinary. It's based on attachment, which is like junkie, berserk. The mind goes berserk, No control whatsoever. you develop clairvoyance. Lama Tsongkhapa says that you will develop clairvoyance. According to the Abhidharma teachings, there are two kinds. One is what we understand as intuition, an untrained sense that we all have to some extent. For example, you might feel strongly without any logical proof that something has happened to your dear friend back home. The other can be gained by training your mind in meditation, like we're discussing here. You are able to see long distances as well as other people, including their minds. At first, your experience seems a bit like a dream, but the more your concentration develops, the more clearly you can see, just as you would if you were there in person. This kind of clairvoyance is not imagining something. It's actually in the present. This is the point, though, when we understand the capacity we have of a subtler level of mind, which we're asleep to right now. This is exactly what we can accomplish. And when you calm down the grosser level, the sensory and the conceptual, you awaken that level of mind. And the Buddha says we really can't begin to help sentient beings until we have clairvoyance. That gives you the wisdom to see the person's karma exactly and know exactly how to benefit them. I mean, this is stupendous, this level of mind, This is what Buddha's talking about. We've all got this capability. So just to give you some excitement, to know we've got that potential. And the tantric techniques just are quicker, that's all, at all of this. They're just quicker, that's all. More brilliant, more sharp, more powerful. But they're the most advanced, of course, so we have to go one step at a time. So what else, people? 20 past 11 in San Francisco, 20 past 1 in India, whatever. Any other questions, please? Questions are good. No.
It looks like Sydney is raising her hand.
Yes, Sydney, absolutely. Talk to me, sweetheart. And Maria.
Hi.
And Maria, yes, good. Talk to me, Sydney.
I'm like so lucky. And every time I hear this, I think, God, I'm so lucky. I was like, it was 13, 14 years ago. And I met Gelek Rinpoche.
Yes, wonderful.
Who is my guru.
Wonderful.
And everything that you say makes me love him more.
Good, I'm so happy. He was Lama Yeshe's friend. Did you know that? They were good friends.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
He spoke about him.
Right.
He also brought to our center Geshe Geshe Tapka.
Yes. Oh, Geshe Yeshe Topton. Geshe Yeshe Topton.
He's the sweetest man. And also Denma Locho Rinpoche.
Absolutely, yes.
Of whom Gelek Rinpoche used to routinely tell us he was terrified.
Of course, that sounds like it's his main guru.
He was the nicest person I ever saw him. I mean, I never heard him raise his voice.
No, of course.
But he illuminated for me especially the suffering of change and how chaotic our brain gets when it attaches obsessively to something. And he used to describe it as like the graph of a sine, the sign, for trigonometry. And he said, when you want something and you see it, he said, all of a sudden your eyes go to it and you start to go up, 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 and you do everything in your whole life to acquire what this thing is because you're so convinced that this is going to be it. When I get this, I am going to be just ecstatic.
Exactly.
And he said it goes up, up, up. And he said, and the very occurrence of getting what you say you want starts you right back down.
That's right.
Because anything that you were going to get that you say you want, that's an object or he called it contaminated or impermanent.
That's right, exactly. That's how they talk. Is there a question, Sydney? Is it just a question, or are you just sharing the Lama's teaching?
Well, I'm kind of sharing it, and I'm wondering if this is like, because I feel like as soon as you get something, sooner or later, that thing that you get is going to be the thing that's going to make you mad.
That's right, exactly. So then what's the question?
And so
what's the question,
if you
Sydney?
can pull,
what's the question?
Do you sit and just remind yourself of both sides of it every time you start to get attached?
What do you mean both sides of it, Sydney?
What happened last time
Sydney, what do you mean? Sydney, darling, what do you mean by both sides of it?
It appears very delectable and I need it and I want it.
So what's the both sides?
What happened? What's it going to be like in 20 years or what's it going to be like
what's
when
the question,
it's over?
Sydney? What's the question?
Is it helpful to stop yourself every time?
Okay, what is the reason for, you've just given a very nice description from whichever Lama it was. It's exactly how they talk, and that's exactly how attachment works. So what he's doing is giving you a description of reality. So then you compare that reality, the reality, with what we think it is, and then you see there's a disconnect between how we see it and what we. So what do you think the learning is? What do you think you do with that? What do you think the practice is? I mean, he's giving you what to do. I mean, surely if you've got a misconception about something, then you hear how the correct conception is. Your practice is to get used to the correct conception, isn't it? That's what practice is. What else would you do with it besides that? Until eventually you see it like that.
Hopefully get rid of all the ups and downs.
Well, that's right, but the only way to do that is by seeing reality. So what the Lama's telling you is the reality of it, whereas our mind believes in that story. So then we just have to see the reality, and then you stop buying into it eventually. And eventually your mind will be like Demolo Taruta, and you'll see reality like he sees it. The practice is to listen to their instructions, to hear how the Buddha says it does exist, and then slowly become familiar with that and get to see the truth of it yourself. Not just blindly believe it, but get to see the truth of it yourself until eventually you counteract the lies. That's what practice is.
And so when you interact with people, which, I mean, you're a nun and you teach all the time, and when you have contact with your family, are they accepting of the fact that you view things differently than they do?
They don't know I do things. They know vaguely that I talk about. They know nothing. They don't ask me. They just see me in my Buddhist robes, and we have fun and talk about the football and the weather. We never talk about Buddhism.
Okay.
They have no idea what I think. They just vaguely think I believe in reincarnation. I think that's all they mainly think. They're not sure what else.
There it is, the whole thing.
And they never ask me.
I find it kind of a little bit difficult sometimes because I'm a mom and I'm a wife, and my family did not sign on for this,
right.
And that's
but I mean, why? But they don't have to know. You don't have to speak about these things all the time. You don't have to. I never speak about it. But I mean, in the end, you're the proof of the pudding, aren't you? If there's anything useful in being a Buddhist, it has to end up conveying to them that you're a nicer, wiser, kinder, more compassionate person. If that's happened, then they'll be happy. But I mean, they don't ask you what you think, do they? Do they ask you what you think?
My son does, and then when I try to answer him, he'll say, "Oh, quit being so cryptic."
Well, then, okay, so often what people do, then they will ask you out of being polite, and you have to know if they really mean it or not. If my sisters say something, I'll just laugh and crack the joke and change the subject. They're not really interested. In the end, the bottom line. I mean, I end up having conversations. I mean, one of my sisters, I have a lot of conversations about the mind. She doesn't think, oh, Robina's being a Buddhist. She just likes what I say. But of course it's Buddhist. So you can also but you just got to be the example and keep it private. Keep your practice private. Keep your words private. Don't talk about it. Just be normal. Be normal, Sydney.
Unless they ask. If
and
they ask, I do.
But if you got to know if they're sincere, they're maybe just being polite. And if they ask, just get them to think about it. So what do you think? Make it a conversation. I think be very low key about it. In the end, that's what I try to do. I mean, I can't be low key about my clothing and my bald head, but I can be low key about what I say and how I behave. So that it's, whatever it is, they don't ask, but whatever it is, if I'm a good example, then good enough, isn't it? I think so.
One would hope.
I think so. That's right, darling. Exactly. Thank you, Sydney.
Okay, thanks.
What else, people? Anything?
Maria would be next.
Good, Maria. Talk to me, sweetheart.
Venerable, thank you so much
darling.
for this. So what popped up in my head for some reason in my very first grade kindergarten understanding is I hear a lot of references to planting the seeds, preparing the ground, getting rid of the weeds,
yes, ma'am.
And the realization of all the manure that's in this mind right now. And in that same, I guess, analogy, is it okay to say that for this person right now, as I am, the manure is necessary in a way to fertilize the seeds and the plants to grow the seeds that I'm trying to grow? Is that okay?
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but the point is, at the moment, if we think of it in a more, I think, no, you see, no, if you think of them as seeds and you think of it as manure, then it seems a bit sort of like weird. It means you've got to have anger and you've got to have jealousy. No, don't think that way. The simple analogy would be, at the moment, no, not even the analogy, the Buddha's view of the mind is we have a bunch of states of mind that he says are really causing us terrible suffering, that are very disturbing, and they're very delusional, and they lead us up garden paths, and they cause us to harm others. And they're called attachment and anger and low self-esteem and jealousy and depression. Now, we're very familiar with those words, aren't we? And we know they're not pleasant, don't we? Whatever we think the cause is, we know they're not pleasant. And all Buddha's saying is, well, you know what, guys? I found a method to help us get rid of those. Do you understand? And the first step has to be to own them as mine. Forget about whether your husband's a creep or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. That might be true. The real powerful one is it's my depression, my anger, my jealousy, without guilt, without shame, without neurosis, but really thinking, and I see it's causing me pain. So they're the weeds. Think of it simple. They're the weeds. And you want to pull them out. Then you got the flowers. You got the kindness and love and compassion. They're our saving grace, Maria. And they are, finally, if we're talking about the Bodhisattva path and even the Tantric path, they are who we really are. So, the weeds are there, but we don't need them. No, you don't need them, but we can learn from them. So every time you get angry and you try to own responsibility for it and stop blaming your husband or your daughter, then you see, look at the pain it's causing me, and then you start to go more deeply, like we're talking about to Sydney, you start to analyse the conceptual story that anger is, and you begin to find that it's got no basis. It's just based on the fantasy I. It's all a construct. It's a conceptual construct that we've built up. So you start to unpack it and believe less in it. That's how you pull out and then you do purification practices, and then you live in vows, and these are all methods that are said to be very powerful in putting atomic bombs under those weeds. That's all the purification process, and then that enables the flowers to start to grow, and then you start to want to grow the flowers, grow the love, grow the compassion. So that's the best analogy. The weeds are there. We don't need them, no. But we can learn, given that we've got them, we can learn from them and realize how much suffering they are and not want them again. So try to get rid of them. But we've got to learn to be very brave because it's going to take time. And one of the biggest problems is when we start to see our minds, we start to get very depressed and think, I'm such a creep, I'm hopeless, I'm no good, oh my God, I'm so angry, oh my God, I'm so attached. But there's always been there. It's just that we start to notice them more now. So we've got to learn, part of the process is we've got to learn to live them with them. It's like you've got a bunch of crazy roommates and they're not going to leave soon. So no point in wishing they weren't there, no point in getting guilty, no point in trying to suffocate them. You can't make them go away, but you can learn to have the courage to listen to them, to hear the crazy voices, to listen to them, to see how they're causing you suffering, but to own them and almost like become friends with them. And then that's a very powerful method for not getting overwhelmed by them and not identifying yourself with I'm bad, I'm no good, I'm depressed. It's a very skillful method. And then you can see them more clearly and listen to them more clearly, and you can learn to change them more easily. It's very important. That's part of the process. To live with them all, greet them all. Don't be scared of them. Often we either live in denial of them and push them all away because we can't stand them, or we hate ourselves for them and keep going on about it. That's all really wrong. It's really so self-destructive. They're old habits, honey. We've got to be very humble. They're a bunch of habits and they're ridiculous. So we learn to live with these crazy kids, these crazy roommates, and then that gives less power to them. Do you understand?
Wonderful. Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
thank you. That made it so clear, the roommates.
Good, Maria. Good, sweetheart. Thank you so
you.
much. Thank you. So we've got 30 minutes. What do you want to do?
We do have one more question from
happy.
Wendy, unless somebody else has questions and wants to unmute.
Oh, I'm listening, Wendy.
Okay, I think it's you, Wendy.
Yeah.
Robina, I have two questions, but I don't think they're different.
Okay.
One is there are many artists who work. There's a flamenco dancer I know very well, right? And she's incredible. And you feel that she gets to these very subtle states of mind, right?
What do you mean by subtle states of mind, Wendy? Because first of all, before we go on, subtle state of mind that we're talking in concentration, you wouldn't even be breathing. You'd be in subtle. So we're talking subtle. You mean she gets very focused. Everybody
Yes.
does that. Yeah, that's that's a possibility. People, when they run, people who play tennis, when you get in the zone, they talk about your mind becomes so focused. Yes, it's a marvelous state of mind. So the question?
This is something completely different that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, what it is, it's concentration. Look at anybody. Ourselves, when we even just really concentrate and don't get disturbed by what's around us, your mind's more sharp, isn't it? And that's why concentration in its nature is not virtuous. Thieves need concentration, as Lama Zopa says. So we make it virtuous by wanting to use it to see our mind so we can become liberated. But in its nature, it's not virtuous. It's a very powerful state of mind. When we have a lot of pleasure, I'm not trying to be too personal here, but people when they have sex, their minds are super focused, super laser-like focused. So that's the way the mind is. We can learn from it. But the point here is concentration is to use it to practice virtue. But we honor that state of mind as a special state in itself in our culture. But basically, it's mostly driven by attachment, So yes, it is concentration, and it can be very focused, and it can be very blissful. But unless we use it to practice virtue, it's just samsara. That's not to me. It's not trying to be depressing or negative. It's technically the way Buddhist teachings work.
The body scan is insight into impermanence. What is the insight with Tantra? Is it emptiness?
We're trying all the time. We're trying to get the two wings of the bird. We're trying to get the wisdom, which is insight into emptiness. Yes, the whole thing is insight into, and you're utilizing the two modes of meditation. You've got concentration, and then the second mode to get insight. You're visualizing, and you're becoming the deity. You get super focused as if it's the real Buddha right there. That's the second mode, and then by identifying with that deity within yourself, once you've internalized it, you're then realizing emptiness. Yes. Exactly. Insight into emptiness is the final one, is the one that cuts all the rubbish. Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's the sutra approach too. So let's just talk a bit about emptiness then. Okay, what does it mean? Because everything leads to emptiness. This is Buddha's view. Buddha across the board is saying we're not in touch with reality. And he means it very quite literally, you know. And so in junior school, we just control the servants of those crazy delusions. And then we get to high school, we start to unpack and unravel them. When we learn low rig, we learn the mind, and we understand that we begin to distinguish the crazy roommates from the good roommates, like we're talking to Maria. That's huge practice. That's being our own therapist every day. So all the time what we're trying to do here is not learning to hear, like again, Sydney's point, learning to listen to the way attachment actually functions. Right now it's just an instinctive feeling that causes us to completely believe the cake is delicious, and we never analyze any of it. So here, that analysis that she gave, coming from Demolitrimche or somebody, is a clear description from a mind of a person who knows exactly the nonsense of what attachment is thinking and doing. So then you learn to become much more conscious of the misconceptions that these delusions are telling us, and we learn to believe them less. So already we're starting to see that we're not in touch with reality. And as Lama Zopa says, all these delusions, the grosser ones that we're dealing with in high school are attachment and anger and all the others. But this prepares us when we get to the deepest level in the Bodhisattva path, when we get to the 6 perfections, and we get concentration, which is the 5th one, and then in the 6th one, we start to get insight into the deepest of the delusions, the workings of the deepest delusion, which is the one we're going to talk about now. The actual one that's called ignorance, ma-rigpa, which is the one that is the root of all the others, such that when you've uprooted it, you've begun the process of climbing out of your samsara into your nirvana. You cannot fall back after that. This is the subtlest neurosis. And there's a hierarchical relationship between all these ridiculous states of mind. So in the high school level, in the middle scope, when we learn about the mind, we learn to try and get real renunciation of attachment and all the others. We learn to see how they're disturbing to us, but crucially we start to see how they're leading us up garden paths. They're conceptual constructs that we have made up for many lifetimes, and we totally believe are the truth. So as Lama Zopa says, all the delusions decorate on top of what is there, the cake, the person, the event, layers upon layers upon layers of qualities, of characteristics that literally aren't there. So what does attachment exaggerate? What does attachment embellish? It embellishes the delicious aspects of the cake. Now we all know when you've had 5 pieces and your eyeballs turn towards that shape and color, and you recognize chocolate cake with your mental consciousness, how will it look now? Now you're seeing it through the lens of your anger, your aversion, and it will look disgusting. The same cake that's not even cold yet. So in other words, anger, aversion decorates ugliness onto something. When you're in love with Fred, attachment decorates deliciousness, and it blinds you and you can see nothing else. But when he leaves you for another version a few months later, and he's got no extra grey hairs, no extra fat, he's now seen through the lens of your aversion and of anger, and he looks truly revolting. This is enough to prove Buddha's point that nothing has an intrinsic nature, or as all the Buddhas would say, or as Lama Zopa puts it, we see everything. So they say everything appears back to us. And the entire world out there appears back to us in the aspect of whatever is in our mind. But we're so familiar with this way of working, we don't even think we have a viewpoint. We don't even think. We think that something is ugly. We just believe it is ugly. We believe the ugliness is in that boyfriend's veins along with his blood. We never think our mind has anything to do with it. That's how entrenched we are in this primordial misconception that everything exists in it the way it appears, as existing in itself, having nothing to do with me. That's the actual meaning, the deepest function of this ignorance, this maripa, this ego grasping. So of course we have to unpack it and look at it at different levels, which we need to do when we study the mind. We study emptiness. That's the deepest one. That there's this literal split between me and the universe. And it is exactly like, in the way, however it appears to me, that's how it exists. We never think for 1 second that our mind plays any role at all. And that's what Lama Zopa says, and that sounds pretty shocking, that the vast majority of all humans on the planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their lives. So that's the depth of our ignorance, this primordially deep sense of like just yuck, nothing, ignorance, stupidity. We're just me plodding through the world, and we reinforce that view with our neuroscientific view that says our mother and father made us, with our scientific view that says our brain is the mind. I'm not being rude about neuroscience. I mean, His Holiness brings people together. I sound like I'm splitting people apart. I'm just trying to show our views in the world. So that reinforces, my mother and father made me, it's not my fault, nothing to do with me, I never got born, I didn't ask to get born, they gave me anger, they gave me hate, look at that ugly person out there, look at that gorgeous person out there. We all go mad. This is why, because we said the job is to start realizing that whatever I see out there is seen through the lens of my mind. It's so clear. Lama Yeshe talks about this in Mahamudra. They talk about the mind is like a mirror. This is not how we think. Our mind is a mirror, and everything out there is reflected back into our mirror. And of course, if your mind is full of anger, full of depression, full of anxiety, how do you think the world appears to you? Horrible. Come on. If your mind is, like I said about the joyful person, a person who's less neurotic, less attached, less angry, more kind, more loving, more compassionate, their mirror is completely clean. So the way the world appears to them is completely different. Completely different. The mind is what makes everything up. This is all meaning emptiness. And all emptiness means is the lacking something. Buddha says everything lacks this intrinsic existence as being out there from its own side, having nothing to do with me. Hey, I'm just this innocent victim looking at it. Look at it, it's so ugly. Look how horrible it is. No, it's our mind that's making it up. This is what's so outrageous. This is the meaning of emptiness. Of course, emptiness, the word throws us. We think it means nothingness. Oh, might as well kill myself. There's no I, there's no this, there's no good, there's no bad, might as well die. No, that's nihilism. It's not that meaning. It's a more precise meaning. And we should be able to unpack it intellectually to understand the technical use of the word empty. This is really important. We so misunderstand it. The commonest way in the world to misunderstand the Buddhist teachings on emptiness, this is the commonest one, is that it means nothingness. That's why we've got to study it a little bit, a lot. And a good way to see it is in the context of the two truths. Buddha says that there's conventional reality and there's ultimate. And everything has a conventional characteristic, everything has a conventional way of existing, and everything has an ultimate way of existing. Everything in the universe can fit into these two. So the shorthand for the conventional is that everything exists as a dependent arising. Everything is a dependent arising. Everything exists interdependently. It sounds very sweet words, but it's got precise meaning. And then the other one, ultimate, everything lacks an intrinsic meaning. Everything lacks an intrinsic character. Everything lacks an independent character. So we have to ask then, why is Buddha telling us that? It's a very important point. Why is Buddha telling us that everything lacks an independent character? And of course we can't hear the meaning first. We don't know what he means by it. But why is he telling us? We've got to ask that question. Why is he telling us that everything lacks an independent character? Because little people, he says, because honeys, because petals, I'm sorry, because you think they have everywhere. Ignorance makes you believe that everything has an independent character. And look at it right there. They just proved it before. Ugly boyfriend. Look at that ugly boyfriend. How dare he do that to me? Look at him, ugly in his own bones, ugly. So we believe there's an ugly boyfriend independently of my mind. Of course there's not. This is the real meaning of emptiness. Everything exists As Lama Zopa says, is our own karmic appearance. Everything exists according to past karma, past habit, and the way our mind is now. So if you've got a very loving mind, a very compassionate mind, and a mind that understands karma, and you look at your boyfriend, you won't see this horrible, ugly monster. But if you've got the victim mind that believes you didn't ask to get born, and you're an innocent victim, and you've got a mind full of attachment, which is the hubris of believing that I only deserve good things, and then the outrage and the shock and the horror when he's mean to you, which is anger, then you will see the boyfriend as a monster, ugly, out there from his own side, and you're this innocent victim. That's the universe. That's how we suffer. That's why we suffer. So Buddha's telling us that everything lacks independent character. Everything doesn't exist independently of my mind. Everything exists in dependence upon my mind. That's the true meaning of emptiness. It's the subtlest meaning, the hardest one to see, but the one that's most, in a way, is most logical if we think about it. It's so clear. That's why I use my friends in prison as such brilliant examples. Prison, if you see the conventional character of something is you name it, you label it, you define it. So what is it? What is a prison? Well, I'd say a good definition of a prison is an ugly place where you're sent, where you're naughty, or you think you've been naughty and you can't escape. That's a good definition of prison. And they're usually the ones I've been to in America. Some have been fairly nice, but most are pretty ugly and revolting. And usually it's an ugly place where you're sent when they think you've been naughty and you can't escape. That's a good definition of prison at a conventional level. So if you look up in the real estate pages in the newspaper, old-fashioned days, and see free rent in a prison, you won't go there. Oh, no, you don't want to live in a prison. Who wants to go in a prison? Because we all know it's ugly. So that's a conventional truth. That is a conventional truth. But what Buddha says is this. Because of ignorance in the mind, we overlay on it an extra component of being prison, ugly from its own side, intrinsically. And this is the part that's really subtle to get. So we think, well, how can it be conventionally true, but there be no intrinsic character? They're the two parts that split our brain. And these are the two parts we have to bring together in the middle way, because they don't contradict. But right now we hear it as a contradiction. We hear on the one side Buddha say, there is conventionally an ugly place where you're sent when you're naughty, and it is ugly, and it is smelly, and it does have barbed wire, and often the people are horrible who live there. They are facts. Then we hear that conventionally, and then we go, Buddha tells us the next second, but there's nothing from its own side. Huh? What? Make up your mind, mate, we'll say. But we've got to put these two seeming contradictions together. And that's why we have to squeeze our brains, as Lama Yeshe puts it. So, my friends in prison, who happen to be happy people, some of them I'm thinking about. One guy on death row, for example, Mitchell on death row. Yeah, he killed somebody 35 years ago with his mate Leaf, who's also in prison. Leaf is now a Catholic. Mitch is now a Buddhist. I've known him for 20 plus years. Something, I forget how long. 25, yeah. God, so quick. Gone so quickly. So anyway, he's nearly getting close to his death date. He's not a psychopath. I know some psychopaths, out of prison as well as in prison, believe me. But Mitch is not one of them. He was this white southern boy in Kentucky with his friend Leaf. They had guns, they were into drugs, and people die if there are guns, I'm sorry. So they're on death row. 3 people died. So he's looked on his mind, he's worked on his mind, he's a grandfather now, getting close to his death date. So the point is this, he's worked on his mind all these years, he can't get out of prison, he's tried his best, he's had all his appeals, he can't get out, he's going to probably get electrocuted very soon. It's okay, but the point is, he's worked on his mind, like we're talking right here. Every word I'm saying here is what he's been doing. He puts his money where his mouth is. So he can't change his external environment. He can't change it. He's tried his best. He can't. So he lives in his red jumpsuit with his 40 other friends on death row. All the Kentucky death row people live there. Some are wackos. Some are nice people, But he's worked on his mind. He's kind. He gets up at 4 a.m. He does his practice for a couple of hours. Breakfast comes at 5 o'clock. He gives it away. He then takes care. He goes into the arts and crafts shop and he gets his little things and he makes little cute things for people all over the world. He never asks for anything. He's never asked me for a cent all the years I've known him. He's funny. All the people on death row adore him. He's like their friend. He goes jogging. He goes to the gym. He's changed his mind. He's a happy man. He's a happy guy. Now, if you looked at his house, it's a disgusting house. His ugly old Victorian blue stone with no air conditioning and no heating, boiling hot in the summer, freezing cold in the winter. Not many nice roommates. Some roommates are quite pleasant. They all share the same clothes. They're red jumpsuits. Food's pretty disgusting. But he's a happy guy. Why? Because he's changed his mind. This is the point to prove the Buddha's point. So if this is the point now. If prison was in its bones, intrinsically, independently of your mind, from its own side, in and of itself, ugly, he could never be happy. Not possible. But we can change our mind and see things differently. That's implying the entire practice from A to Z of being a Buddhist, all the way to enlightenment. Things are not set in stone, and your mind, more than anything, is not set in stone. So it's to his advantage for him to see his prison differently, because he can't get out of it. And it is a dump conventionally, but he sees it differently. He's become content. He's given up attachment to wanting something different. He's accepting his reality. He tries with his lawyers to get out of prison. If he's fortunate, he might. Leaf maybe has finally he might get out after a while. He delights for Leaf. He rejoices. He's funny. The last time we had a talk, when I saw him last year, he was talking about how he should think when he's being executed. He was tried in the 80s where they had to have electrocution. It's not legal anymore, but they've got to have it still because that's how he was sentenced. So they've got to, fry his body, basically. So they've got to this guy's going to come up to him, like this close, electrify all his body, put a hood on his head, put a sponge on his head, make it all wet, put him in the chair, and then turn him on and fry him, He said he was trying to work out what's the best way to think about this person as they're going to kill me. Should I think of compassion for him? I said, that's a good idea, but let him do his job, And just work on your mind. Think of your guru, think of the Buddha, do your practice, have your eyes closed, and focus on your practice. That's it. He kind of was cracking jokes about it, He's a happy guy in this shithole, in this dump, I promise you. I visit for 2 hours and I try to think of myself staying there for the rest of my life, and I hyperventilate, And why is he happy? Because he's changed his mind. He's not stupid. He can still see this ugly, ugly place. He's changed his mind. That's it. For me, these powerful examples. And that proves emptiness. There's nothing intrinsic there. And Buddha drives this all the way. It seems like you're falling off a cliff, but it doesn't contradict. And this is the point. This does not imply nothingness. When you do the analysis, you cannot find anything in that prison, not one atom in that prison, that makes it prison from its own side, which makes us feel, therefore, there's no prison. And as Lama Zopa says, when you realize there's an emptiness of prison, when you realize there is no intrinsic prison, it's as if there's no prison. But conventionally, there is a prison. But what does exist is so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. These are the two truths from the view of a yogi, And they don't. So when you hear there's nothing from its own side, the easiest conclusion is you tumble into the abyss of the great mistake, as Tsongkhapa says. And you think, oh, well, there's no prison. What the hell? No I, no this, no that. Might as well kill myself. That's nihilism, and it is not the meaning. It is way more nuanced than that. So as His Holiness says, when you do the analysis, and this is what we have to do this analysis in our meditation, because we believe there's an intrinsic prison. We believe there's an intrinsic I in here somewhere running the show, utterly and completely. But there ain't. Buddha said that doesn't need to be one. We don't need an intrinsic I. We don't need a boss to run the show. The parts do fine functioning as I. So as His Holiness says, when you do the research, the subtle research in your meditation on the I, forget the prison, excuse me, you will not find an intrinsic I. You will not find anything in there that is the indicator of the existence of the I. You will not find anything in there. I like to use the example of when you go to IKEA, This particular analysis is about looking among the parts. We're all made of parts. Everything's made of parts. So you do the same analysis for the prison. You search in every single brick, every person, every bit of barbed wire. Where's the intrinsic prisonness? What is it that makes it a prison? Because we all believe there's something like that there. So we all believe there's something in here that makes it Robina. So it's like you go to IKEA, you order a Robina, you order a Lin, you order a Wendy, and you get your box. So you look in, and what will be in that box? Hundreds of parts, if not thousands. We know that. And they'll be very precisely chosen. There won't just be randomly 4 legs put in, or 2 left legs and 4 right hands. No, exactly the right arms. There will be all the parts that make up the person. They will be there in the box, nicely from IKEA. But what we're looking for, as we start putting the I together, this piece, this person, this Robina, we're looking for the piece that's called I, this special little piece, such that when you put it in there, it becomes Robina. That's the intrinsic I that we believe is there among those parts. Like my friend Pende says, there's a special little I in there, the part that's called I, that helps the hand and the foot and the nose do their job. And as Pende says, that walks hand in hand together with the other parts, and it's the piece that we think will make it the Robina. No, you won't find that part. And the Buddha says you don't need one. Now, as His Holiness says, the I is not empty of intrinsic existence because you can't find a part called I. That's not the real premise. The I is empty of intrinsic existence because it's a dependent arising. So as Lama Yeshe says, dependent arising is the king of logics to prove emptiness. You cannot have the two truths without each other. They're finally coming to the same thing. And when you're a Buddha, you've finally got the two truths down, where they appear to you simultaneously. So this is why for Tsongkhapa, it's the best way to realize emptiness. And he praises the Buddha's teachings on dependent arising. This blissful text that he wrote in praise of the Buddha's teachings on dependent arising. So all the teachings of the Buddha lead to this. Renunciation, all the teachings in junior school, high school, university lead to this one. And this is crucial to understand in Tantra. Because if there were an intrinsic I in here, in this bag of bones called Robina, how in the name of God in heaven could you become this ridiculous green lady? Don't be ridiculous. Not possible. Impossible. Impossible. So the understanding of Tantra is absolutely contingent upon understanding emptiness. And the motive that drives it is compassion. So I've got to go to junior school first, high school, university, all the way. And each informs the next. It's clear, Okay, time to go. Nearly time to go. That'll do. Any questions before we go home? Or die or whatever. Yes, Lynn?
Is it too late to do a little tiny Tara meditation?
Why?
I just like what we did yesterday and we did before, and it's inspiring.
Okay. I suppose it's called a Tara retreat, isn't it?
Oh, that detail.
Okay, well, maybe just...
Up to you. If there are questions, I know.
I understand that. Any questions, though, besides that? Thank you, Lynn. Any questions besides that? No?
I just have sort of a clarification.
Good, Maxine.
See if I'm getting this right. That we use our intellectual understanding or our conceptual understanding of emptiness to move us, to inspire and to move us through these methods so that we can have direct experience.
That's right, precisely.
And
that's right,
that
exactly.
if we have the direct experience, then we use this information to help our mind like grok it, like land it, like integrate it. Is that right?
That's right. And if you think about it, Maxine, is that not how we learn everything? Everything we've ever learned and internalized as knowledge has come from the intellectual first. You learn the cake recipe. You start to understand what a teaspoon is and what this is and a gram. In the beginning, it's very abstract. And then you start to see the relationship between those pieces and how they all work together nicely. And then you slowly make the cake, and eventually you've internalized it completely and you've got the recipe down. Every bit of knowledge we've ever internalized has come like that. So that's exactly right, Wendy. It's exactly right. And Maxine, yes, exactly. Exactly, darling. And that's why it's so important to get the recipe right. We think this is just intellectual, that's just philosophy. I want to meditate, please. No, you can never make a cake if you haven't got the right recipe. You can't just wing it, You've got to be precise in your recipe, and then eventually you get it down. Do you understand? It's so necessary, that's why it's so necessary to study these words, to study it and analyze it and think about it and meditate on it until it becomes a real experience. And that's why we need the teacher. The knowledge holder who's got this experience already. I mean, you could go around looking at 47 cooks and 47 cookbooks and you make many mistakes, but get the real knowledge holder, get your mum, and that's your direct knowledge holder, your direct teacher who will pass on the experience to you. And that's, I think, very powerful. I know I mentioned that about when my mother showed me how to make that cake. It became it was the first time cakes became real for me, because my mind was open. I checked on her. She was knowledgeable. I listened and I did what she said, and it stuck in my mind. I remember that moment, that day, the power of and you just don't get that from reading a book. It was the direct transmission to me of her knowledge. And we talk about an empowerment. We talk about receiving initiations. I received an initiation from my mother into cake making. That's not a joke. I received a direct transmission of her knowledge. And this is my point about devotion. What caused me to receive it was my mind was open. That's why we have to have the teacher, Does it make sense?
I just had a quick question about, you had provided us with some homework for the past 2 nights.
Yeah.
And, if it's appropriate, if you could just give a comment about it.
Okay, sure, darling, I will. It's very good. No, the first one I said, go to sleep in Tara's lap. You can do that if you like. The second one was to see your dreams as dreams. And this is a really good example, because the way the lamas are saying, as I've been talking before, we see everything as very set in stone, as concrete, as absolute, as the way we see it. We don't question anything. We don't doubt. We don't see it from another point of view. We're just very fixed. So, and we believe in everything we see. So now in our dreams, it's the same. We have a dream and you wake up and go, oh, it's just a dream. So to be able to, while you're dreaming, to have the ability to see, to realize it's an illusion, to realize it's a dream. That's a very good way. They talk about how we can bring that into our daily life, to loosen the grip on believing this is how it is. It loosens the mind to see everything like an illusion. And they say as you progress more and more as a yogi, realizing emptiness in your meditation, you see everything as empty. And then out of your meditation, you fall back into the world and you see people and things and beds and toilets and good people and bad people, but you're less grasping at it. You realize it is coming from this, but it's like an illusion. It's a very powerful practice to help us do that. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
thank you for asking. I forgot to mention.
Did I hear you say that while you're dreaming,
yes,
you see it as a dream?
Yes, exactly. And a lot of people have that experience. Have you had that experience? Yeah. When your mind gets more subtle, some people have it a lot. It's lucid dreaming. Some people have this a lot, And I remember one time for myself, a few times it's happened for myself, and that means when your mind is less cloudy and mucky, occasionally one's mind might be less cloudy and mucky, it's fortunate. But I remember doing a retreat I did, a 3-month retreat. My very first became a nun. And it was a very intense retreat. And I'm not much of a meditator, but you work very hard, 8-12 hours a day, And so for about a week or so, maybe more, my mind, we'd go to sleep at the lunchtime. It was in Dharamsala in the rainy season. We'd have a little nap at lunchtime. I remember my mind, I have these crystal clear dreams, crystal clear, like as if it were real life. And this, I think I call that lucid dreaming. But at the same time, I was completely conscious that I was dreaming and that everything was around me. I could hear all the talks and the voices and everything. That's your subtle mind. That's your subtle mind. So that the yogis can access that completely. That's where we can have clairvoyance. And that's why people talk about their dreams of seeing things, seeing the future, seeing the past, but we don't know what to do with it all. That's the capability of our subtle mind, So we can try and practice those things. It's very helpful. Do you understand?
Thank you.
Good. What else, people? 1 minute to go. We can do Tara in 1 minute, Lynn. So we think of Tara out there, and she's a mirror image of what we want to become. She's showing us how to be. She's like Roger Federer in the poster, showing us exactly what we can become. She's the idealized Buddha. But we think of her as the manifestation of our own Lama's mind, so it makes it very personal. The Guru Tara, my Guru as Tara, my Lama as Tara. And she's sitting in front of the sky, blissful, radiant, green light body. Her left leg drawn in like in meditation on the multicolored lotus, but her right leg out resting on another little multicolored lotus in this action pose, ready to hop up to benefit sentient beings. She's full of wisdom, full of compassion, and she's action energy, success, fearlessness, cutting through the obstacles, making things happen. We need that badly, and there she is showing us that we can do it too. So we just imagine now that she sends light from her heart. Just imagine she sends radiant light. As I say, it's white light, doesn't matter, and it enters our heart and fills us completely, utterly, joyfully, this laser light, and it purifies all of our neurotic, ridiculous speech, all our ridiculous body, all the actions we've ever done in the past to harm any sentient beings with our body and speech since the beginning of time. Eradicate, gone, instantly gone, and crucially, completely annihilates all the rubbish, ridiculous misconceptions, all these hallucinations, all these projections, all these elaborations, all this nonsense that we have made up and that we believe in as real, that which aren't real, that have no basis in reality. The ego grasping, the attachment. The ego grasping that clings to the fantasy me, the attachment to get what the fantasy me wants, the panic of aversion and anger and despair or depression when it doesn't get what it wants, and all the other 83,997 rubbish hallucinations disappeared like a dream, gone, full of this radiant white light, full of all the energy, removing all the rubbish. And now again she sends the light, and what else happens now? We manifest perfect body, perfect speech and perfect mind, our own potential, our ability to be of benefit to all sentient beings with our body and speech, and our mind seeing reality as it is, full of wisdom, full of compassion, full of power, our own natural potential just dying to get out. Full of this. This is who I am. How amazing. And then she comes to sit above our head, very happily. And then you imagine she dissolves into green light and absorbs through our crown, comes through our crown. And then we visualize that our body, speech, and mind, and Lama's body, the Tara's body, speech, mind, and our Guru's body, speech, mind completely merge. Union, oneness. This is who I am. How amazing. And then you visualize that you expand to fill the universe. Blissful, radiant, clear, no thoughts. And now we think, moved by our bodhicitta, well, now I'm Buddha after all these many lifetimes of working hard, but why? To help others. So I must manifest. So now we visualize all the friends, enemies, and strangers of the whole universe. All the beings in the universe. And we send billions of taras out and into every one of them, taking away all their suffering and giving them all their happiness and turning every one into their own true nature of Tara. Instantly. Imagine this. Om Tare Tutare Ture Svaha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Svaha. Om Tare Tutare Ture Svaha. They all become Buddha. How amazing. And they all dissolve into green light and absorb into me, each one of us, enhancing even more brilliantly our Tara nature. And now we finish with the 4 immeasurable thoughts, these marvelous bodhisattva aspirations. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, ignorance, and anger. May they abide so. And this next one is the brave attitude of the bodhisattva. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirths and liberations, excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Deity, please, Guru Buddha Tara, bless me to be able to do this. Did I leave one out? I can't remember. Equanimity, free of suffering, and full of happiness. And then that one, the 4th one. So we finish with that, okay? So whatever we've talked about, any of it's useful, 1% even, put it into practice. I always ask, what's the action? That's what I said to Sydney, Sydney, what's the action? You hear all this, what do you do with it? You think, what's the action? You put it into action. You analyze it, you use it. That's the point. You don't fill your head with knowledge and not forget to do something with it. You've got to put it into action. A recipe is to be made, that's the point, And all these teachings are taken to be taken as sound advice, as Tsongkhapa says, because there's no contradiction between scripture and practice. There's no contradiction between the recipes in the cake and the cake. So let's get the cake. Come Tara. Jang Chup Sem Chup Rinpoche. Ma ke panam ke yuchi ke panyampa me payang. Gong ne gong du pabasho ge wadi nudo dag lama sangye jup gyone. Drowa chikyang maru pa de sala gur pa sho. Okay, Gina, we're done. Thank you, precious girl.
Thank you so much, Venerable Robina. We had wanted to do the short mandala offering on behalf of Chen Ling, if that's okay.
Absolutely, darling. Wonderful idea.
Okay, and Cindy, who's been my co-host this whole time, is going to lead us.
Good, sweetheart. Do that. Okay.
Nam da shin la tro pa sho ita hu na man ta kam nyurya ta ya
Thank you, dear Sydney. Thank you,
Thank
precious
you.
Sydney.
Thank you so
darling.
much.
Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you, darlings. Much love to everybody. We did that one. I did it.
Okay.
Unless you want to sing it, Sydney. Sydney.
We also have
Sydney.
the long life prayers if we can.
Okay, do whatever you think. Okay, you do. You go. Okay, go. Good, very good.
高为我为公为心康的，放荡的为马路用为你，真为心为天生告诉你，下配心态保住当个心。
Good, darling. Yes.
And for Lama Zopa Rinpoche.
I don't know that one.
Do the English, darling. Do the English, Sydney. Do the English, sweetheart.
You uphold the subduers more way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, care of myself and others, your disciples. Please, please live long.
Good, darling. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And then we'd like to do a long life for Venerable Robina if everyone wants to join in.
Okay.
Yes.
Mother of the victorious ones of the three times.
In directions. Dhammakaya, the great bliss embraced by great compassion, my perfect Arya Tara, who in an ordinary form are the guide for us pitiful, transmigratory beings, left guileless. How kind you are. May all your wishes be instantly fulfilled, and may your life be stable until samsara ends. Almighty One, O Might One, you who destroy all the enemy of delusions, who reveal the Dharma of scripture and realization, spreading it in the mental continuum of transmigrating beings, thereby eliminating the two obscurations, including their imprints. How kind you are. May all your wishes be instantly fulfilled, and may your life be stable until samsara ends. By the blessings of the Guru, the deity, and the Dharma protectors, and unbetrayed actions and their results, as well as the truth of ultimate reality, in all my lifetimes may I only please and never displease for even 1 second the Guru, and may all the vital points of my prayers be fulfilled.
Okay. Wonderful. Good. Everybody.
Thank you, Cindy. And thank you so much, Venerable Robina, on behalf of Chen Ling.
Okay.
We're so grateful to have you. You brought together people literally from around the world
Good.
for teachings that I thought were just so clear and so powerful. We hope to welcome you back someday possibly soon.
Good.
And we're just really, really grateful.
Good.
Thank you so much.
I think we all had, as interdependence, we all had a very good time together. So thank you all for coming. We had a wonderful time. I'm very happy. Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Cindy, darling. Thank you, everybody, for all your questions. It's so helpful. Much love, people. Keep going.
Thank you,
Never give up.
Venerable Robina.